Resident Evil 2 is one of the classics. It brought survival horror to an all-new level with its memorable creatures, environments, and puzzles. But after all these years, it's definitely starting to show its age.
By the time I noticed something was wrong, the entire city was infested with zombies.
I was 11 years old when this game came out, and at the time it blew my mind. There were certainly other horror games that laid the groundwork for Resident Evil 2, but up until then I had only been exposed to the typical platformers or beat-em-ups. The idea of an entire game that was designed with the sole purpose of frightening the player was completely new to me, and that only amplified how effective it was.
Wait! Don't shoot!
Get down!
Apparently the developers wanted the soundtrack to focus on desperation as the main theme, and as far as I'm concerned, they nailed it. The music in this game was relentlessly creepy. Even in rooms where you're supposed to be safe, I never felt it. Nowadays, a game with zombies and gore is nothing new, but this was 1998. This whole zombie culture that we all know now didn't really happen until after Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead, and that was 6 years after Resident Evil 2. With stiff tank controls and awkward aiming, Resident Evil may not have had the greatest gameplay to fall back on, but it didn't matter. Instead, it focused on keeping you on edge. You never felt welcome in this world. It was a stressful, unpleasant place to be, and horror fans ate it up.
I just can't take the pain!
Resident Evil 2 had a deep sense of dread. This was pulled off with a few simple game mechanics. You always had to take your items into consideration. You have to stop and think about your next objective. Do you have the items that you'll need handy? How many weapons should you bring along to protect yourself? What about the ammo for those weapons? You want to fill up your extra slots with healing items? Or do you want to risk it and be able to accomplish more without having to run back to the item box? Saving your game is also a huge tension builder. I know it's weird to think about, but without any checkpoints, if you died in Resident Evil 2, you get sent right back to the main menu with no chance to keep going. You get a game over and you better hope you saved recently. Really think about that. If you start Resident Evil 2, play all the way to the final boss, and die, that means you start over from the beginning. Old school survival horror had the balls to not worry about appealing to everybody. These games held you accountable for your actions, for better or worse. With all the things that have changed about Resident Evil over the years, I still think that the games have a lot more in common than you'd expect. I mean, you're still playing as the same characters. They run around abandoned cities or creepy old buildings that ultimately end up being a front for some high-tech underground laboratory. The games are full of ridiculous dialogue, even at their best.
I'm sure you boys didn't just tag along so we could sing Kumbaya together at some Boy Scout bonfire. Then again, maybe you did.
So I find it interesting that with so much of the formula left untouched, the recent games are still considered disappointments. I think it goes to show you just how important execution is. You can have all these similar ideas and themes that reoccur from game to game, but the way that you present them is everything. That being said, Resident Evil 2 is clearly more than the sum of its parts. In fact, it was a game changer. It elevated the horror genre to a cinematic level that hadn't been seen before. And it made us all believe that a rookie cop, a toddler, and a college student could team up to save the world.
Hey, it's up to us to take out Umbrella.